which will be uploaded to our website as well. As you can see, we're doing also closed captioning today. This is a pilot for us, so we're just trying something out. So closed captioning may not capture everything. So if you need further clarification, if things are not clear, please feel free to reach out to myself, Tyler, and Sarah, who will be more than happy to answer your questions. So today's agenda, we'll do a little bit of a welcome. We'll do a land acknowledgement. I'll provide an overview of Toronto Foundation. I'll then talk about the Emergency Community Support Fund and give you an overview about the eligibility criteria. I'll share some examples about projects that have been funded with Toronto Foundation and also other activities as part of the fund. Then I'll talk about the application process, important dates. Then we'll wrap up with some contact information, and hopefully there will be time for some Q&A. So to begin with our land acknowledgement, I would like to acknowledge that this is the territory which is situated upon traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Truth and reconciliation must mean action and not just words. We must acknowledge the historical and structural oppression of Indigenous people, and thus it is our responsibility to create and ensure culturally appropriate spaces, provide opportunities, and work with Indigenous people to constantly learn, reflect, and act when we're called upon to do so. Okay. So Toronto Foundation, one of about 200 community foundations across Canada that exist to provide and improve quality of life for Torontonians by highlighting needs, engaging donors, and making grants. Philanthropists come to Toronto Foundation to simplify and to enhance their charitable giving. Through our 500 plus fund holders and our discretionary funds, we have granted $27 million to organizations in the 2019 and 2020 year in Toronto and across Canada to create a more fair and just society where everyone can thrive. So I just wanted to do a quick poll just to make it a little interactive. So I'm going to ask Tyler to pull up the first poll question, just to get some details about you all, as well as some of the, if you're thinking about the ESSF and what your projects will be, whether this is your first time learning about it, or this is if you're thinking about submitting an application to this organization or to the fund. So I'll give you a few moments. Okay, great. It's almost about 50-50. So there are people that have submitted, 45% have submitted a fund to the first round, and about 5 have not. Wow, that's great. So the Emergency Community Support Fund, round 2, it is the second installment of the $350 million fund, which is now released by the federal government to Community Foundations of Canada, also known as CFC, the Canadian Red Cross, and the United Way. This is to continue the flow of emergency support funds to charities and nonprofit organizations serving our most vulnerable during COVID-19. So with Toronto Foundation, we have been allocated $2.1 million to disperse to organizations in Toronto. Applying through Toronto Foundation, you are able to apply of grants of up to $75,000. You must be a registered charity or other qualified donee. And what a qualified donee is organizations that can issue official donation receipts for gifts they have received from individuals or from corporations. So these are just some examples of eligible project activities that have been taking place throughout COVID-19, and also some project ideas of if you're thinking about your project and want to sort of gather some ideas around what you can do during this time, during the second round. So one of the things that has come about with COVID-19, some of the project ideas is around creations of digital platforms. For instance, to continue mental health and addiction recovery programming, the development and delivery of virtual mental health programs for caregivers. One of the pressing issues and needs during COVID-19 is around food security. So preparing and purchasing of food kits for marginalized families that are experiencing interrupted support and services. Also additional meal service for staff at women's shelters to meet public health guidelines. Others around purchasing food assistance for members living on reserves where supplies are actually limited or interrupted. Another is about purchasing equipment, whether that be a freezer or a fridge. So a number of food banks have done this to accommodate the rising costs and rise in need in food orders, and also technology purchases as well too. Other examples of project activities also could be increased staffing support, the preparing and delivering of food for people with disabilities, remote art programming for vulnerable youth, the procurement and delivery of educational materials, the development of online social skills and curriculum for individuals with special needs, therefore to replace in-person programming, and also the deployment of social workers as well. Oops, sorry. Pardon me, I think technology, sorry. So these are just some of the ineligible expenses. First is projects designed to provide financial stabilization and recovery and the resilience of organizations' general operations. Projects that are designed for fundraising purposes, profit generating projects or activities, research projects where findings and tangible applications do not directly benefit vulnerable populations impacted by COVID-19. Any activity that's taking place outside of Canada is not eligible. Also previously funded project expenses in round one that were funded by Toronto Foundation, and also project costs that have received funding through another ECSF intermediary, such as Canadian Red Cross or United Way. So these were just some of the activities that we at Toronto Foundation have funded in round one. As mentioned, food security was a very pressing need and continues to be during COVID-19. So a lot of the applications that came through that we supported were around food security. Another big issue was access to digital technology, gender-based violence, virtual summer camps for kids, mental health services for youth, access to legal services, access to health services, harm reduction support programs, housing services, job readiness programs for youth, access to parks and green spaces, support for women such as single mothers and caregivers, newcomer services, and as well as support for the 2S LGBTQ community, as well as art-based activities. This is not an exhaustive list, but it just gives you an idea of some of the projects that we supported during the first round. So this slide here is just a representation of the funds during the first round of COVID-19 with the emergency community support fund that we funded. It's to really just show you a visualization of how the disbursement of funds were allocated during the first round within Toronto Foundation. So the grants kind of break down in terms of organizations in Old Toronto. What we know is downtown Toronto is 55%, North York being 15%, Scarborough 11%, York 7%, Etobicoke 5%, and East York 3%. Looking at this graph here, this picture, it's important to take notice of a few things. One is that within the first round, it was a rolling application. And generally in Old Toronto, because there's a high concentration of organizations in the downtown core, we always receive the greatest amount of applications from that area. But what I also want to point out is that in areas such as North Etobicoke, many parts of North York, many parts of Scarborough, where we did not see a lot of applications coming in, it does not mean that we didn't outreach and do the engagement piece. It's just a factor of, we know that in these areas, COVID-19 is quite heightened and exacerbated based on another number of inequities. And these are the areas that we at Toronto Foundation are trying to target because of the high COVID cases that continue to rise within these areas. And so for us, it's about putting that lens of equity to ensure that these organizations in these important neighborhoods are able to be informed, get access, and to apply for the fund during the second round. And also within the equity lens, within Toronto Foundation, what we also did, we looked at sort of like the whole picture of everything in terms of the organization we provided money to. And within that, 32 of the organizations that were funded through the first round were led by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. So the important piece is the application process. And so I want to go over this and we'll definitely have more of a discussion in our Q&A. So in your application, what we are looking for is that you be clear in what you are doing now and the support that you need in terms of a COVID response. In your application as well, identify the individuals, groups that you are supporting. Please include a budget in your application. A template will be provided for you within the portal, so there's no need to create your own template. The template is provided in the portal once you decide to do your application. You also must commit to using the funding in full by March 31st of 2021. Commit to submitting a final report by April 10th in 2021. Also to grant permission to share your application and contact information with ECSF partners. Identify if you're equity-led and serving, be clear on which primary populations are being served, and explain how your project and your activities are filling a gap during this time. So once you have decided to apply for the second round of the fund, you're going to go onto the CFC website, and then this is what you will be presented with. The application deadline is October the 30th, Friday, October the 30th. So this is where you would start to do your application. You would click apply now, and then your next, the next step would be this page here. So this is the actual application portal. And you would go apply now, go apply now, and then you would either start a new application, or what CFC has done, if you applied in the first round but did not receive funds because we ran out of the money, or decided not to go fully, put the application in full, what CFC has done is they have gone ahead and imported your draft application if you've started one in the last round. So please reread that and ensure it aligns with the questions being asked. If you haven't done that, then you would apply, you would register. You just have to create a username and a password, and therefore you can continue to do the application. So if you are a provincial or national application, I know this sort of like, this chart may look a bit, hopefully it's not daunting, but I will explain. And so if you're a national or provincial organization, you should apply to CFC's national provincial stream, or your local community foundation, depending on how your organization is structured. So national or provincial organizations who are registered with a single CRA number must apply to CFC's national provincial stream. And these grant amounts are actually up to $200,000. And this includes organizations with or without local chapters and regional branches. So, so CFC's national provincial stream is for organizations whose mission and mandate is to serve one or more provinces or has a nationwide coverage or approach. And organizations can only submit one application to the CFC's national and provincial stream portal. So these are just some important dates. Applications opened up on Monday, October the 5th, so just last week. You're here on this information webinar, so thank you again for joining us. Next Thursday, once you, after this webinar, if you still have questions, if you want to know more about the application and so forth, we're having a live Q&A webinar on next Thursday, October the 22nd at 4 p.m. And this is really just an open format. Please feel free to come in, ask your questions, as many questions as you want, and then myself, Tyler, and Sarah would do our best to answer them. You can also contact us after the webinar as well too. So there's no problem with that. Applications close on Friday, October the 30th. We make our funding decisions here at Toronto Foundation our goal is by Monday, December the 15th of 2020. Your project ends March 31st of 2021, and the final report is due April the 10th, 2020. So there's, as mentioned, there are other funders within the Emergency Community Support Fund, the second round. As mentioned, Canadian Red Cross and United Way are also part of this as well. And so with Canadian Red Cross, if you would like to apply through them, grants are up to $100,000, and they're available to support Canadian non-qualified donees that provide direct service delivery. Also, they are specific to nonprofits supporting vulnerable groups and organizations. And you can also apply for the grant for PPE. For United Way, the maximum amount of funding allocated for a project is $50,000. And also you must have a proven track record of providing programs and services to the vulnerable populations identified in your application. Also, you must have charitable status or be trusteed by an incorporated nonprofit with charitable status, and you must be providing programs and services in the areas that United Way does their scope, that being Peel, City of Toronto, and York Region. So if you have any questions throughout the process up until October the 30th, please feel free to email us. To reach us, you can reach us at ecsf@torontofoundation.ca. The application link is available here, which will be provided once the presentation is over, and you'll get the slides after this. And any specific Toronto Foundation ESF information can be found on our website as well. So I just want to do one last poll before we close and we get into some Q&A. I just want to know, where is everybody, what area of the city do you primarily do your work? And so I'm just going to ask Tyler to pull up that last poll. See, 80% has voted. More. Okay, perfect. Great, looks like we have a very diverse group of people that are coming from all parts of the city. So this is wonderful. So thank you so much for contributing to our pool. So thank you very much for spending your time with us this afternoon. I would really like to leave it up to now Q&A to have any questions that you may have. Once again, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. We very much encourage you to apply for the second round of funding because we want to ensure, especially in communities where COVID-19 and the cases are increasing in parts of the city, we want to encourage those organizations to definitely apply. So thank you very much. And I will leave it now open up for questions. I'm just going to go over some questions here that I see. I see Jane. Could you, so the eligibility or eligibility criteria. So to apply, if you're looking to apply with Toronto Foundation, you would need to be a registered charity or qualified donee. If this is not your organization, you can apply to the Canadian Red Cross or United Way. So we have a question from the YMCA. Would PPP be an eligible cost to apply for? This is by far the biggest expense and challenge affecting our organization as a result of the pandemic. For any PPE application, I know the Canadian Red Cross is one where you can apply to. I'm also going to bring in Sarah just in case in case I am making the assumption that it's just with Canadian Red Cross, but from my understanding, to apply for PPE is through the Canadian Red Cross. Hi, Jane, I seen you raised your hand. You're unmuted.
Oh, hi there. Sorry, I had just asked about PPE. I know it as personal protective equipment, but I didn't realize it was so popular. I just wondered if it had any other meaning, that acronym.
Oh, no, yeah, you're right. It does mean personal protective equipment. You're right. Hi, Peter. I see your hand.
A quick question. I understand the projects are from April 1st to March 31st. So can we apply for funding for expenses that we've already incurred as of April 1st, 2020?
My understanding of the grant is yes, you can apply for that.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, thank you. Can you apply to each of the 3 different funders? So for instance, Toronto Foundation, the United Way, and the Red Cross for different projects? Or is this one project through this funding and you decide which funder to go through?
So you can apply to the different funding entities. So you can apply to United Way, you can apply to the Canadian Red Cross, you can apply to us at Toronto Foundation, but just be mindful that we are working in collaboration and conjunction with each other. So if, let's say, for instance, you received funding through us, and if you apply to United Way, then they'll look at that and say, well, they have funding for this, because we want to also ensure that the funds, because it's a second round and it's less than the first round, we also want to make sure that funds are being dispersed equitably across the sector. So not to say you can't apply to all 3, you can, but just be mindful that we will be looking at applications from organizations that have applied for with multiple entities as well. Is that, Deborah, is that, or did I answer your question?
Oops. Yes, thank you very much. I thought I was unmuted. when I said thank you before.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank you so much. No problem. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there. I wanted to ask a question around applying if you'd already applied in round one. I noticed in the frequently asked questions and stuff that it said that you could apply for either unfunded portions from round one, but it wasn't clear whether or not you could apply for a different project and secondly, to a different community foundation. In the case of my organization, we serve many different communities that have foundations. So instead of applying to the same community fund for unfunded amounts, we're hoping to fund a slightly different project with serving a different community that we serve.
So is your question asking, can you apply to different community foundations for one particular project, or is it multiple, or is it different projects?
It's a different project than we applied for in round one, or similar, but it serves a different community foundation or a different community. So we would thus apply to a different community foundation than in round one.
And it's for a different project,
it would either be for a different project or the same project within a different community, because we've applied for a specific community fund in the first round, and we serve more than one community. So there's we had to choose in round one which community would we focus on with round one. So we're trying to figure out if we can focus on a different community in round two.
You definitely can focus on a different community in round two. I would just have to say you just have to make sure that the project that you were funded for in round one is not the same project for that community that you intend to do your work in. It
would be two different communities that the work would be done in.
Yeah.
Okay, but it could be similar project?
From what I understand, were you funded for in the first round for a particular project in that neighborhood?
Yes, we were partially funded for a project delivering service to a particular community, and we're looking to replicate that or take a portion of one of our other projects and propose it to round two. We're just trying to determine which strategy.
So as long as you didn't receive, as long as you're not putting in an application for the same project that you received in round one, my understanding is you should be okay to apply for funding for that other community foundation. As long as it's not the same project costs, then
it would be costs that would be incurred in two different communities.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Hi there. I see Dee Bonner.
Yep. Thanks for taking my question, Felicia. Just a question for you around who to apply for. We're a Scarborough-based nonprofit. We hit all the criteria, but I'm confused as to whether we should apply for United Way funding or Toronto Foundation funding, apart from the difference in maximum allocations. Is there a specific organization? Yeah.
So you can apply. So is your organization a registered charity or is it a nonprofit organization?
Registered charity.
Okay, so with the registered charity, you can apply to both United Way and Toronto Foundation. As mentioned in my earlier answer to, I can't remember what her name was, but you can apply to both entities. So you can apply to United Way and apply to Toronto Foundation. But also, as mentioned, we're coordinating with each other to ensure that if an organization applies for both us and United Way, and if they received funding through us, then they most likely may not receive funding through United Way, because we want to ensure that the allocation of the fund goes across sector equitably. So you can apply to us, and you can also apply to United Way.
Okay, we were successful in the first round with a grant from United Way. Would that impact who we should be targeting in this tranche?
No, it won't impact that. First, it doesn't. Yeah, so you can still, yeah, you're welcome. So you can apply to United Way for the second round. You can also apply to us too.
Okay, I'm just wondering, I don't want to do 2 applications. I know you guys are talking. I think I have my answer.
Okay.
But I was just confused. It just because you're out there, so is Brampton, so is Mississauga. There's so many
Right.
options. I just wondered what the direction generally was.
And is your organization, are you doing work in Scarborough, you said?
Correct. Scarborough, Mississauga, Peel region, and Scarborough. We're all over the city.
Okay, and then and for your for the activity that or the application you want to put in, would the work be done in Scarborough? Would it be in Mississauga? Because that will also ensure.
It can be done in either of the 3.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's a program that can get on the ground very quickly. Would be done in Scarborough or Mississauga or just one.
Okay.
It's very portable.
Okay.
It's Sarah here from the Toronto Foundation. I just want to pipe in, if I could, just to add on what Felicia said to this question about whether or not who you should apply to, Toronto Foundation or United Way. You can apply to both, but you will only get funding from one of us. Otherwise, you can, and we actually would probably encourage you to just consider who you have a better relationship with and where it makes the most sense for you to apply. But because we're not going to be making 2 grants for the same project costs. So again, it just comes down to who you have a better relationship with. If you feel like you align better with the goals and the philosophies of the United Way or with Toronto Foundation, it's really kind of up to you.
And that should be our sort of guiding benchmark. Am I understanding that correctly?
Given your specific situation, that's what my advice would be, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's very helpful.
You're welcome. I'm just going to look in some questions into the chat. So Rosanna has asked about 3 different project ideas. Can we apply to 3 different funders? So Rosanna, if you're looking to apply to us, United Way, and the Red Cross, you can. But just as Sarah and I were mentioning, to apply to who you have a better relationship with in terms of the fund and who you think in terms of the ideas that you want to present. Yeah. So a question from the source, which is similar to Rosanna. If there are 2 different projects we are doing, if there are 2 different projects we are doing, does an application to each for the different projects make sense, or are you telling us it's better to apply to one funder? Well, what we are saying is that you can apply to the different funding agencies, but we will be funding for only one project. Okay. You're welcome. Are there any other questions? We have lots of time left, so. Hi, Deanna, thanks for your question. So I'm just going to read out for everybody here. We are an organization with a national reach and archives that works in Toronto. We have a relationship with TF, Toronto Foundation, yet seems more appropriate to apply to United Way. Are you saying we can go with TF and then forward if need be? So what we are saying is that you can apply to both of us. You can apply for project costs through Toronto Foundation. You also apply for the project costs through United Way as well. Yes, and so we actually don't, if you're talking about forward, we don't forward applications to the Canadian Red Cross or United Way. You would actually go on their site for the fund using their application portal.
Can I jump in here really quick? Because I feel like the same question is coming up 3 or 4 times, Felicia. Is it all right if I just do a quick spiel?
Oh yes, go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
So for everyone in the room who's wondering about the different intermediaries and who to apply to and why and what am I allowed to apply to, the parameters of the grant stream allow you to apply to all, well, as long as so to apply to the Canadian Red Cross, you can't be a registered charity. So just take that into consideration. If you are a registered charity, you cannot apply to the Red Cross for their funding, but you can apply to them for their PPE. If you are a registered charity, then you have your choice between United Way and Toronto Foundation. Since this is all the same pot of money from the government, we will be working very closely with United Way to share who we are funding and who they are funding, because the pot of money is not allowed to fund the same project twice. So while you can apply to both of us for the same project, you won't get money from both of us for the same project. You are also allowed to apply to both of us for different projects. However, as Felicia and Sarah stated before, because we are trying to make sure that this pot of money gets distributed equally across Toronto, and there's definitely not enough money to make grants to every registered charity in the city, we will be working collaboratively with the United Way to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of money. So it would be unlikely that you would receive a grant for both of us, even if it's for 2 different projects. But the grant parameters do not preclude you from doing that.
Thank you, Tyler. So a question from Mackenzie: is the application identical for both United Way and Toronto Foundation? What are the differences in the application process? So with the application would be slightly different. I know with United Way, they ask a little bit more questions than with the CFC, which is the portal that Toronto Foundation is using to process the application and look at the grants applications that are coming in. What I can suggest is to take a look at both application portals. But I know from the last time when we looked at the application through CFC, questions around just your project details, your budget, the vulnerable populations that you are serving, those are included in the portal and would be the same for United Way. But from my understanding, they ask a little bit more questions that are not too encumbersome, but just a few more than what we offer and what we ask. Hi, Carrie Jean.
Hi, is the application for the Provincial National Stream the same as the application for the local community foundations? Is it all the same link?
Yes, it's the same link.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So to Jane's question, you mentioned we must be a charitable status. Will you support orgs that are not, but trusteed by a charitable organization? At Toronto Foundation, to apply to us, you need to be a registered charity or a qualified donee. If you are not, then you can apply to United Way or to the Canadian Red Cross. Because United Way accepts organizations that are trusteed by a charitable organization, and the Canadian Red Cross, you can apply if you're a nonprofit organization. So to Samuel's question, can we apply to 2 different projects at the same time from Toronto Foundation? Yes, you can, but just be mindful that when we are looking at applications, we will only be funding one of those. Any other questions? Sure, to Jane's question about elaborating on a qualified donee. So qualified donee means any organization that is able to give or issue donation receipts to individuals who have donated to their organization. And Tyler has just put up a link to, in terms of the definition of what qualified donees are and who they are. I also just want to remind people, because I did see it in the chat earlier, that you will be getting the slides after the presentation, and therefore you can see the information that I have presented today, and also that will include the links to the application portal, where to contact us, more information on our website about the fund. But even in the meantime, please feel free, you can reach out to us for the next week and a bit, or next, actually almost 2 weeks and a bit, to ask us questions, get clarification in terms of the application portal, budgets, grant amounts, up until October the 30th. So the documents that you can upload, Samuel, on the application portal is the budget. The budget template is included in the application portal, but you can also include any other documents. Could be a statement, could be an impact statement, but we were just looking at the information that is within the portal and what you put in the application online. In terms of what kinds, it could be, I have seen like a letter, like a testimonial. I've also seen just like a flyer as well. Just sort of like small documentation. It doesn't have to be like a 20, 30-page document, because really we're just looking at the information you put in the application. So the important things are you serving vulnerable populations? Are you asking for the amount allocated within the grant amount? Are you serving within the City of Toronto if you're applying to us? Your project, your details about your project. So yeah, so that's what we're looking for.
Can I pop in with a couple frequently asked questions that I've been receiving in the email so far?
Sure, sure.
So some of this stuff we've already went over, but just to reiterate that the money from this funding opportunity must be spent by March 31st, 2021. I've received some questions about whether the program must end by that date or whether it can continue. So that question, I believe, is based on if there's an ongoing program that your organization has been running. Say you've pivoted and you're offering food or groceries now, as opposed to your other services, and you plan to continue that after March 31st, even though, or while the pandemic will likely still be going on, as you may continue your food program after March 31st, 2021, but the money that you get from this funding opportunity must be spent prior to that date. So your programs may continue, but you can't earmark some of this funding to be continued paying out as the program goes on. This funding must be used by March 31st, 2021, if that helps. It's a question I've been getting a lot of. I'm also going to take this opportunity to post the applicant guide, the link to the applicant guide PDF on the Community Foundation's website. This has the answers to almost every question you guys have been asking us today, as well as some of the email questions. I highly recommend before filling out your application that you do take a look at this applicant guide. It'll walk you through the steps, as well as provide a bit more context around what we might be looking for in some of the questions.
Thank you, Tyler. So any other questions? We have about 10 more minutes, so please feel free to ask questions. So to Samuel's question, when can we start receiving decisions on our project application? So by December the 15th, 2020 is when we will make our decisions about who will be receiving funds through the second round. And yes, you can definitely work on a draft in the portal and then come back to it later before you're submitting it. Yep, so if your project starts December the 1st, well, if your project starts December the 1st, that is okay, because if your project ends if your project must end by March 31st of 2021. So as long as it ends there, then that's within the parameters of the fund. So to Katie's question, will you be prioritizing applications that were not funded in round one? The answer to that is no. We're just looking now at this as being this sort of a fresh start and the second round. So I encourage you to submit your applications as soon as possible. And so therefore there's no disappointment. I just want to make a note is that the grant stream, because it's a less pool of money, it may be quite competitive. So as mentioned, we would encourage you to submit your applications as soon as possible. As mentioned in the presentation, when you are applying, be very clear in terms of what your ask is. Make sure it's within the parameters of the grant amount. Make sure your project ends by March 31st. and to make sure, of course, that you're serving vulnerable populations within the city of Toronto, because of it's, as mentioned, it's a less pool of money, and we will be looking at all the applications. So we just want to make sure those things, that when you do it, that those things are clear, and that there is no sort of questioning or wondering what your project is about. So to Samuel's question, he's asking, you stated in your application question that will your project continues if you're awarded a smaller grant, please explain. So Samuel, to be clear, are you asking that if the project, do we still award the grants if it's a smaller amount? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
I think I know what you might be asking, Felicia. Can I jump in?
Sure.
Samuel, some of the other community foundations across the country choose in their grant making and review that if they think that the group has asked for too much, they will grant the group a smaller amount. So with Toronto Foundation, we don't do that. We trust the organizations when they apply to us that they're asking for an amount that they need and they can use, and that the project costs are right. So we don't award grants smaller than the asking during our grant application. So that question is for Toronto Foundation not so important. But it's also just letting us know whether you believe the project is going to continue anyways.
And then Sarah has mentioned that we may also run out of funds and may need to make a smaller grant as well.
Right, like our last one.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go to, someone has raised their hand. Olga, if you'll go ahead. Hi, Olga. Hi, Olga, you're unmuted. Hi, Olga, I just unmuted you. Hi, Olga, I'm just sending you a message to unmute you. I just need you to agree. Hi, Olga.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I just wanted to find out the type of technology you've funded in the past.
Oh, sure. So we have funded access to digital devices for, let's say, people with disabilities. So that could be laptops. We've also funded, I'm trying to remember in the first round, but I know a lot of the ask was around access to digital technology. So it could be like providing of like a Zoom, like virtual programming for kids, for adults, for seniors. So yeah, so that's what we have funded in the past.
Okay, thank you.
In the first round. You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Are there any other final questions before we sign off for the day? As mentioned, please feel free to reach out to myself and Sarah at ecsf@torontofoundation.ca, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And as mentioned, next Thursday at 4 p.m. is the live Q&A, which is really going to be very informal. Please feel free to come with as many questions as you like to learn and to just get more clarification if things are just unsure, even within the application, the portal. So more than happy to answer those questions on the live chat. So thank you so much, everybody. I see some people are signing off. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. We greatly appreciate it. And good luck with your applications. As mentioned, I'll repeat, please feel free to reach out to us anytime from now until October 30th, as the deadline is about 2 weeks away.